First of all, I would like to say welcome, Daniel, to the channel. Daniel
Okay.
Page, dialing in from Paris, sunny Paris, or what, just outside, or yeah, you're in
Just
Paris, aren't you?
outside of Paris.
Just outside Paris. And good
Ben.
morning as well, Florian.
Hi, Anthony. Hi, Dan.
Hi there.
Nice to have you
Yeah.
on the show.
Yeah, first time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Been a long time in coming, and appreciate you joining us today. And just to follow up as well, you've had a nice blog post for us, Machine Clicks, which I'm very interested to learn more about.
Safety
And I
first,
think
by the way.
Florian,
COVID.
excuse.
Safety
Yeah,
first.
okay.
It's COVID.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
We have to sit 1 meter
microphones.
away from each other.
There we go.
It's
Yeah,
mandatory since few days ago. Anyway, sorry, started.
that's fine. It's just as well. My breath's that bad anyway. So yeah, just to cut to the chase. So we're going to be speaking about machine clicks today, what they are, how they work, and what we should be aware of in terms of reporting. So I think that appeals to a lot of email marketers out there, as well as Daniel will take us through some spam filtering techniques, and on your main server. Is that correct?
That's correct. So starting off on the machine filtering, mixing everything up now. The machine clicks, which are actually very interesting. It's something that I was actually very surprised to find and was worth investigating, because that can throw email statistics, especially on if you're just looking at click-through rates. So the first question is, can we filter them out? And the second question is, if you can't, which it looks like you may not be, and we'll go into the examples in a minute, just to be aware of them, so we can actually go and try and apply a couple of rules to, let's say, make an educated guess about what are real legitimate user clicks and which ones aren't, and why we have problems with them. On the second one, I've managed my own mail server for a few years. Now, I won't say I'm an absolute professional, at least not anymore, but I self-host my systems. And of course, as everyone, I've had problems with spam. And actually having a direct email directly connected on my own server to internet with zero filtering, the amount of raw, pure spam you receive is absolutely insane. So using mostly Spam Assassin, because that takes the heavy lifting out, there are a couple of rules that have taken, I would say, 95% of spam out directly. There are a couple of false positives, and to be aware of how they occurred, so I'll go into that. And a couple of the custom filtering techniques that I use, and possibly at some point you can throw the basic examples on the blog if anyone's interested in applying them.
Okay, just to put
Very
that
interesting.
Into context for the non-experts like me, we are talking about basically emails, links in emails, and whether they are clicked by humans or by machines, by
Correct.
programs. And
Correct.
and why this is a problem. One thing is because tell me, why is it a problem, or is it a problem at all?
Well, theoretically, no, a click is a click is a click, but where it's a problem is where you have email engagements. So if you are going to, you send an email campaign to say 100,000 recipients. You look at your raw statistics and you can see that there were 40,000 clicks. You've got a 40% click-through rate. That's absolutely excellent. Then you can see that maybe people clicked multiple links in the message, so people are really engaged in the message they've received. And then you start doing some filtering, and you realize that out of those 40,000 clicks, they may not have been unique clicks, or rather, they weren't from the same. They were from the same user that clicked multiple times. So you ponderate that. Then you start looking in and saying, okay, where did those clicks come from? Oh, this one came from Verizon. This one came from Orange. This one came from Free. This one came from Google. And
Okay.
a lot of them came from Google. A lot of them come from Hotmail. A lot of them come from a random big box hosting corporation, sometimes in Romania, sometimes in New York. So those are suspicious. So
the question is,
those aren't actual real clicks. So the problem from there is, can we take those out and say, these are artificial clicks, these aren't real engagements? my email doesn't have the engagement that I would have expected because of these strange clicks that I see incoming in my statistics.
Okay. And the question is, why are machines interested in clicking links in emails?
Very good question. Now, there are a couple of reasons. Now, we can only make a good guess at this point, but a very educated one. So number one is spam filtering. Malware filtering. So email is and always has been the killer app. And email is also the killer app vector for all sorts of nasties that get vectored by emails, whether it be attaching a link to a malicious site, or whether it be actually containing malicious content, a virus, a malware, something that you don't want to infect you. So to stop malware links, a lot of operators and a lot of solution providers, whether it be malware scanners to stop accessing bad sites by accident, will employ a scanner. So when an email is received, they will scan the content and say, okay, there's no attachment. It's clean. There's nothing malicious or bad that's going to infect the end user that I represent on the incoming email server.
Okay.
Then they will also pass the content and say, there's a link going to an external site. If someone clicks on that link, is it going to be a legitimate page, or will that page itself serve malware and try and infect their browser? So there are a couple of techniques that are used. Either the link is directly scanned by the incoming mail server, or a security system linked to the incoming mail server even before the recipient sees their email.
Mm-hmm.
There's the other system, which is mostly used by the big free mails providers, so Outlook and Gmail as an example, where they will do post-reception, post-click analysis. So the first person to click, sorry, you might have got infected, but the second ones will be protected. And then there are the last case, which I didn't really expand upon because I haven't seen any direct examples, at least not recent examples that I've documented, is where you have some very aggressive security software, and these will look at every link in your email and go and visit every link that has been specified. But no user may even have received the mail. And in some cases, the mail may even be bounced as spam afterwards. But so you have a bounce and you have all your links clicked. So you then have the confusing situation of having engagement on a bounced email. So why did that bounce and how did that happen?
Okay, so I get that from security perspective, it might be a good idea to scan the links and check what's behind. But from deliverability perspective, the problem is simply that, first of all the open click rate stuff is measured based on that. It's measured based on opening links. It's measured based on clicking links. Which is then completely, the marketers have the misconception that there's active engaged users behind that. And the second one, and that's a question that's asked quite frequently, what about spam traps? Are spam traps really active addresses or not? Basically, from the concept, they aren't.
Yes and no. They are definitely an active address because there is software in the background that is receiving these emails and is seeing where they came from. Mostly the spam trap will be just detecting if, for example, you've sold a list, shouldn't do under GDPR, you sell a list to a third party. You trust them to send 1 or 2 or 3 campaigns, so you'll salt your list, you'll add an extra random recipient that you guarantee being correct, but then you monitor that. So when you see incoming content on that email address, you know that your list has been activated, whether it's been for legitimate use. So it's sort of a watchdog. So you know that you have engaged, you've sold your list to be used 10 times. You see 10 incoming emails and nothing more. You know that your partner's being respectful with your terms and conditions. But also you can seed these into your actual website. And if someone ever hacks your website and suddenly you see emails coming in on this honeypot or this spam trap, you know that your list has been hacked and it's being maliciously used.
Very interesting, Dan. So, Daniel, so I'm an email marketer. Florian's gone. I'm an email marketer. I'm just going to try and put this into some sense. Now we know what it is, why it happens. As a marketer, how do we how do we see in the reporting the difference, and how can we identify?
That's actually a major problem, at least on these ones. So if I can share my screen, I'll show you an actual raw example. So
Sure.
Techie alert, it is complicated, but I will break it down as simply as I can.
Love it. Please do it.
Fantastic.
So we have, theoretically, you should see a lovely Linux terminal.
Love it. By the way, Anthony, is it the first time in history of Deliverability TV that we see an Linux?
I believe so. I believe so.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I've collated my logs here. Is that big enough, or do you want me to increase the size a bit?
No, that is good so far.
Okay. So what I have here is a collection of logs. So as a click, what happens? You receive an email. Your email contains a link to your website in some way, shape, or form. You click on that link, you arrive on the website. That website runs, as the name suggests, on a web server, and that server has logs, and you can detect every single access on a website, what resource, what page, what image, what was accessed, what they did, what data partially were transferred at a very high level, and where they came from and what browser they were using. So if I look at
what's the IP with 86.195? That looks interesting.
Yes, that's my personal email. Sorry, my personal IP address. So that's my personal provider. All the others.
What's your personal IP address? Can you tell us?
No, because I blanked it out and I'd need to look it up.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea if you keep it blank.
Take a guess. You can get one of them.
How many possibilities do we need to
One out of 4.5 billion.
Oh,
good luck.
Could take a long time. But probably I won't finish that episode before I know the IP.
So actually, I should have done this in Vim, so I can break one of these down for you. Vim.
That reminds me of my university times, Vim. Love it. Are you good in it?
Not bad.
Cool.
Use it every day. I have to. So what we have here is an Apache log, the log from the Apache web server. So what we have here, and just breaking this down a bit, is you have the IP address that made a connection, the date and time that connection came in, the page that was requested, and the version of HTTP, if it was successful or not, and just skip a few, the browser and the operating system of the client that made that request. Okay. So for this test, I made 2 emails, one on Gmail that I sent to an Outlook address, one on Outlook that I sent to the corresponding Gmail address. Each of these had the same link going to the email test page.html on my website. And I clicked on them, in essence, actually 3 times. So there are 3 records that came from my personal IP address, and that's all that I should expect. I've clicked on each one of these links once in 3 emails, so I should have 3 records. But I don't. I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I didn't click these. How did they come in? So, as I said, if you know...
Someone's been using your computer. No, I'm just joking.
You could have...
You got to lock your computer up.
Yeah. No, actually, what you see from the IP addresses, now this is important, and it's also annoying because it's not that easy to look up, is that the 86195, which I've blanked out for personal reasons, is my personal IP address. So I know these requests came from me. But then I've got one on 4077.167, and it came from a Windows NT 61, so not a very recent version of Windows. Mozilla 5 Apple WebKit, so it could be something based on Chrome, certainly based on WebKit. And this one, very interesting enough, it says the website itself, or the web client that accessed, isn't Firefox, isn't Internet Explorer, but Bing Preview. So that's something to do with Microsoft. But then we see another one coming from a very similar IP, 49.422.693. That address also belongs to Microsoft. This one says, oh, it's Safari. Mozilla 5, Windows NT 10, so Windows 10, 64-bit, WebKit, Chrome, Safari. So something on Microsoft network, which is the only way we can determine that this might not be a legitimate click, is that this IP comes from Microsoft Azure's network, so Microsoft's own cloud, internal cloud. Something on Microsoft internal cloud came and visited my link after I clicked on it. So that is the only way you can determine that it was a machine click. This one, the first one, Bing Preview, yeah, you can say that on that user agent Bing Preview, that's not a legitimate click. Looks like maybe something in Outlook which tried to give you a quick preview somewhere and it's trying to be helpful. So that one possibly you can filter out. But the other one, it's using a valid operating system. It's using a valid browser. It's saying it's using Chrome 79 based on Safari 537. All that's legitimate. Any end user could be using that. Any recipient could be using that.
Can you guess what's the reason for this click?
Something on Microsoft Network wanted to see what was on my page.
Okay.
And that's it. And then, as I said, I also sent an email to Gmail. Strangely enough, I then also have Google's IP addresses coming, sniffing that same URL. Within about a minute or 2 minutes of me clicking, I then get some robot from Microsoft, from Google, that come and visit that link. But the problem is, when you try and identify to say what machine came and clicked my link, it's not a machine. It's a valid user using a valid version of Windows, using a valid version of Chrome. It's indistinguishable. Apart from saying, I know this IP address belongs to Google, therefore I will exclude this from my statistics. So you need to know.
Well, that's a good point, Dan.
And that's where it gets very difficult.
I was going to say this is if we have access to the logs, that we can differentiate.
Or some sort of raw data from your ESP platform. If you can get the source IP address in any way, shape, or form, along really, you'd need the source IP address that made the connection, whether that's anonymized or not, depending on how the ESP works. But if you can get that IP address, you can start applying some filtering rules. So I've added in the blog post some IP or common IPs that I've seen making these machine clicks. So anything that comes from these IP ranges, if you're able to filter these in, say, Excel or Tableau, you can remove those records and then you'll get a much more accurate view. It's not an exact science, unfortunately, but you can get pretty close by excluding the known ones. As Gmail and Outlook are the biggest free mail providers, they're going to be the biggest generators of these fake clicks.
Very interesting. I wonder how many email service providers provide these logs and how accessible they are to a
well, theoretically, on the moment they actually provide click-through links where they will tell you that a link was clicked by a certain recipient. They should be able to tell you the link that was clicked. They should be able to tell you the time it was clicked, what the email address was, and as all of this, if they have that information, they would generally have the IP address that went along with it, and because all this actually comes collated from weblogs. So anything the web server can see, an application that's tracking this to collate and compile statistics can see as well. So of course, it depends on your ESP, but theoretically, this data is available somewhere. If they do click tracking, this information is somewhere on the server.
Very interesting. Okay, and perhaps just from a quick perspective, typically an email marketer wouldn't dig this deep and perhaps report on it. I think first of all, it's awareness. Machine clicks.
Definitely awareness, because if you don't know this is happening, you're seeing, I've got users that are clicking through. I've got users clicking multiple times on the links in my email. I'm really making interesting content. And then actually maybe not so much, especially if you've got a massive amount of Gmail and Microsoft Live Hotmail recipients. Your interest gauged by click-through rates might not be as great as you think.
Have you also seen clicks on links that you haven't clicked yourself, so that are simply clicked by machines?
No. In this case, no. It's only clicks. So this is when I say there are two methods of doing this, and I'll show you an example of how this actually occurs on Microsoft and Gmail. So we have pre-click and post-click. Pre-click, means that the email is received, the content is scanned, and whatever application, security application on their email incoming gateway will decompose your email, and it's going to visit all the links. So before you've even seen your message, it's being vetted, it's being validated, and it's going to then be decided whether that message is safe enough to be then dropped into the recipient's mailbox. You'll find this quite often on banks. So if you're dealing with main banks, their security systems are so draconian that they will only let things that have been positively authorized to access their network. So anything that they don't like will be a cause of rejection of the message. So they will be vetting every single link in every single message that comes into their banking network before it actually makes it to your bank advisor. So those, if you're sending to banks, you will probably see automatic clicks on every single link in the message, because they're absolutely trying to make sure that nothing bad gets into their network, which is good. It's saying they're taking security very seriously. It's a pain for the statistics for the marketer, but that's how it is. But probably that's not going to be, for most people, you're not going to be mass mailing to internal bank networks. The other one is what I call post-click. So you click on the link, you receive an email, oh cool, click. And then that it gets added to a queue on, say, Gmail or Outlook side. And if I can show you what happens, and I'll just share my screen again. So I've received a very basic, very simple very simple email. Excuse me while I just quickly fight with the application.
No worries. I wonder then if... yeah, oh, there you go.
Zoom, bit of quick advertising. So, my personal Outlook box. So I've received an email from numerista@gmail.com. I'm in Outlook, and I've got an email, danielpage.com/email test. So all good up to there. So if I go to click on that, if you can see at the bottom of my screen, the link that is going to follow, protected by Outlook, danielpage.com email test, click or tap to open the link. But if you check the bottom of my screen, you can see that that link actually has been renamed to name10.safelinks.protection.outlook.com. Then there's a redirection. So if I click on that link, it's not going to take me to danielpage.com. It's going to take me to SafeLinksProtectionOutlook.com that will then transfer me to my server. That means that some service at Microsoft is receiving my link, forwarding this on. This link then gets added to a queue, and that queue then gets processed within a couple of minutes, and their software will be looking at the links that get added to this queue. So this is why I call it post-click. I click, I get taken to SafeLinksProtectionOutlook.com, and then I get redirected onto my test page. And within 2 minutes, I'm now going to get a Microsoft service come and visit this link again to make sure that there is nothing malicious on it. So as I said before,
but
this
then
is
it's too late, in fact.
for me, for the first person who clicks.
Yeah.
But then if there's something malicious on that link, it then gets put on a blacklist, and the second person that comes and clicks will then get a warning saying Microsoft has detected that this link is not safe. Do you really want to proceed? So the first person, yeah, tough. But the second one and everyone else gets to take the expression today, herd immunity. Why is this? The only reason that I can imagine, I would imagine, and this is how I would do it if I was in Microsoft's place, or actually any major ESPs, you are receiving hundreds of millions of messages, possibly hundreds of millions of messages an hour. To actually have real-time scanning capacity on all of these incoming messages is huge and costly. And these things are being supplied free, so you want to drive costs down as much as you can. And you know that not everyone's going to click on every email. You might just scan through, not interested, I'll look at it later on. So why do I want to go and waste compute resources on something that 90% of people aren't ever going to click on? So what you do is you then add it to a queue. If someone clicks, you can then do two things. You can click, run your checks, but then people will start complaining that every time I click on a link in Outlook, it takes 30 seconds before I get to my web page. So what you do instead is you click, you add it to a queue, you redirect on as a best effort, because in any case, the ESP isn't responsible for you clicking on a third-party link.
Mhm.
So if you get infected, tough. But as you have that redirect, you get sent to a protection server. The protection server saves your link for later. You get carried on. That link then comes and pulls the content into their security analysis. And then they say, okay, that's clean. Or no, there's a problem. Tough for the first one that got, but now this goes onto our blacklist. The second user that clicks, or the second recipient that clicks 2 or 3 minutes later, will actually get a security warning. So they get to that redirect point. So they come from the mail to the redirect server. The redirect server checks, I know that link is malicious. You're not going any further than that. You will not get sent further on. And that's how you would work it if you were receiving and had to process billions of emails per day. It's the only real way you can make, let's say, intelligent use of your resources available to make sure you can protect your free users in a reasonable way that doesn't cost too much money. Now, going back to my example of a bank, they have an expectation of total security because they're managing our money. So they're going to throw money at security, and if it costs money to process emails, they don't care. It's going to be paid. So they don't care, saying everything that comes in or out of our network will be explicitly scanned. We don't care how much it costs. We must absolutely 100% protect our internal customers, our internal users. And so from there, because it's dealing with people's money, if anyone could click on an email and you could get infected on the first click, and then your bank account gets scanned, you're going to sue the bank, which is reasonable. So that's what they're trying to limit. So different levels of security. As always, security is a cost and benefit. If there is minimum benefit, you can put minimum cost. If there's going to be major benefit, you will put major cost to keep that benefit.
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. A click, to learn a click isn't always a click, and of course we understand some of the reasons why. In fact, the machine. Exactly.
But the other one I just wanted to touch upon is the one that we have on Gmail, because Gmail, as I just saw on Outlook, you can mouse over and you say, okay, I can see I'm being taken through Microsoft's Protection Safe Links program. Some people have complained about this when they initially did it because we see a weird URL appearing that isn't the one that I'm clicking on. So Gmail's actually found an interesting way around this. So if I flip to the same message on Gmail and I put my mouse over, here it says, my link is danielpage.com email test. My actual URL my browser will be going to is danielpage.com email test. So no problem. Now, what is interesting is if you look at the actual HTML code internally, Gmail has done a bit of magic on it, if it ever will display. So they've added some JavaScript triggers in the background. And here we are. So this is my link. As you can see, I've got my mouse cursor over it and it's highlighted. Yep. So my ahref, hypertext reference, is actually danielpage.com email test. But you can see there's an extra parameter, data safe redirect URL, google.com q equals my website, with a couple of extra time tags and IDs. So when I click, there's going to be a JavaScript event that's going to redirect me through Google. It's going to do the same sort of process as Outlook. So it's going to redirect me. I'll click on this link, but it's going to redirect me internally here before sending me on. And as I've got a fairly slow computer today, if I click, you should see that link go to Google for a second, just before I got redirected on. It was very quick, actually. But you suddenly saw Google appear in the new tab before it actually went onto my website. So Google are doing the exact same thing. They're just hiding it a bit better.
Interesting.
Okay, so each technology varies, yeah.
Each technology varies, but the overall effect is the same. That now within 2 or 3 minutes, can guarantee that I will see a Google sourced something come and tickle my web server and say, hey, give me that file as well.
Can you check that?
Not so much in real time, unfortunately, because it can take up to 5 to 10 minutes for it to appear, but it will appear.
Okay.
So just to take a step back from again, I'm always thinking of email marketers' perspective. I realize that there's many reasons why everyone uses email, not just for promotional newsletters, etc. So if you're looking at the report and the statistics, are we saying in a sense that, take the total clicks, the total click rate with a pinch of salt? You really need to,
Minor pinch of salt, but certainly with a pinch of salt.
Exactly, yeah. So interesting. So perhaps we'd more so steer towards unique clicks. I think your article touches upon this, and I think it is an interesting point. If you're not going to kind of research into the logs and do the legwork per se, it's certainly something to take into consideration when you're looking at your reporting, because this, of course, impacts reporting.
So, so much for taking out my personal IP address out of the results. Here we are. So here are my tests from the 28th.
Finally, I know it. That's brilliant. I'm taking a screenshot.
Here are my tests from, well, I'm going to reboot my router later on anyway, so it's going to change. Here are my tests from the 28th, and here are the incoming clicks from the 30th. So I've got one from my IP, I've got one from 40, I've got two from 40, and it looks like I've got a third one from 209, whoever that is, 209.85.238.182, which I guess is a Google. And again, you can see that they're looking like legitimate user agents, so legitimate browsers. They're coming in using legitimate operating systems. They're coming in, they look identical to mine or as any other recipient would see on internet, except the IP address used isn't mine.
It's really strange.
So if we do a who is on that IP address, that's from Google, Mountain View. So it's another one of Google's network ranges. So for clicking on that mail once in Google, it came to my server, but it went redirected and Google came sniffing afterwards.
I suppose, just to play devil's advocate, I suppose there's no other way that they could do it. They really do have to visit the URL. They have to investigate. They have to scan the content. Unless they stored it.
Yeah, they have to have some expectation of security for their users, because that then becomes an argument. It's an arms race. If Gmail say that they're going to start doing some sort of security scanning on messages, then they're going to start taking users away from Yahoo and from Outlook. So they're going to have to start up their game and start providing similar services. The added value, especially for their users, is great. So everyone's trying to grab their market share and provide some way of saying, hey, use our service, we're better than everyone else. Absolutely. So the way they're doing it, it seems to be a reasonable way of doing it, balancing cost versus the resources needed to do this sort of scanning, doing it cheaply, doing it efficiently. So as I said, the first user in this case, tough. If my link downloaded malware, you're going to get that malware, but
what
you're
did
going to protect everyone else.
What are the takeaways? What did we learn? I mean, we learned that obviously when we send links via email, then they are sniffed from Microsoft, Google, whoever.
They're sniffed.
Is it a problem? Should we care about?
Yes.
Can we do anything against? No.
There's not much we can do against it, but what we can do is that we can make, as I said before, some educated guesses. If you see if you have the statistics that give you the IP address, because that's the key of it doing any cleanup, to actually have any idea of how big this effect would be on your numbers, is to have the IP addresses. If you have the IP addresses, it's looking per link, per recipient, how many different IP addresses went and clicked. And if you can then look up via a Whois tool, if you see, say, if you do some ordering and you see that these numbers, you've got 500 or 1,000 emails all being clicked by the same IP address, then maybe you want to have a look at who that IP address is. Maybe you've sent to a huge corporation and that's their actual IP address. That's legitimate. If it's saying something like it's Amazon or Google, AWS or Azure, then maybe those clicks aren't legitimate, and then you can do some processing in Excel or, as I said, or Tableau. If you can take those numbers out, you can sort of say, that's my real engagement. So what I would generally say, most of the time, pre-engagement, pre-click clicking, machine clicking, it happens. It's not as regular occurrence as the post-click scanning. So
Sure.
most of the time, if you have multiple clicks from multiple IP addresses on a specific link for a specific recipient, the first one within a certain period, the first click will generally mostly always be legitimate. The follow-up clicks, if they're from different IP addresses within, let's say an hour, they're probably some post-engagement systems coming in sniffing that email link. So the first link globally is going to be legitimate. The second and third, possibly not, unless they're from the same IP address, and of course that's the same person. The other thing that you can do, as I said, we have, or I've found a list. It's definitely not an exhaustive list, but I found a list where some of these clicks seem to be originating from. So some of the data centers and clusters that we've identified that generate these sort of clicks. So go and read the blog article, and you'll have those numbers. And you can use those directly to filter anything out, and that sort of takes some of the heavy lifting out. It's not an exhaustive list. It was not 100% accurate, but it's a good starting point. If you take those out and you have a look, and if you suddenly realize that your number of clicks in your statistics has been divided by 2, then yes, you're definitely affected, and yes, it's worth having a deeper look in your statistics and maybe finding some deliverability experts to take you through it.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting points and
Do you know any
takeaways.
such people?
Sorry?
Well, we can lend a helping hand.
Experts that could help on this?
I haven't understood. Can you repeat, please?
I can
Do you know
help.
any deliverability experts that can help?
Deliverability experts. I don't know anybody. Just Anthony. Anthony can
There
help.
we go.
Okay, cool. I think we got a lot of content, but it was very interesting from my perspective. Few new insights, and yeah.
It's certainly very interesting, but yes, it is hugely technical. So it's not something that I would say your general marketing manager is going to initially get, but it can affect the bottom line. It can affect the numbers that you think are actually excellent. They might still be very good, but they might not be as good as you initially think because of this. So the numbers can be skewed. So it is worth maybe having a deeper look at the numbers and seeing actually how good an engagement you are really getting on your clicks. Because in the end, if you're sending out mass emails for money, there's a reason. You're proposing a product, you're proposing a service. So actually knowing exactly how interesting your service is and removing these machine clicks is something I think is worth looking at. Now, is it going to be a major impact? Could be. I've seen cases where actually it has been. I've seen cases where it's no use at all. In some cases, it's just information newsletters, so that people don't care how many clicks come through to the website. But definitely, it's something that deserves not to be forgotten, and it can have an influence. And that influence then depends on the cost and the value of the product you're using, and how deeply you're using your email statistics for analytics. And if you're very, very hot on analytics, then this is something that could be very interesting to look into.
Interesting. Wise words, Daniel. Thank you. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. And a lot of insightful information there. And hopefully, welcome some comments to the blog and also the video. It'd be great.
Yeah. So final point. So given we're out of time, I think we might reschedule the spam filtering one for another day.
Let's do that.
Perfect. Let's do another episode about that.
Another one on the Linux command line. The one for what? Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. Welcome to darkness, my old friend. The dark world of the command line.
Talk with you again.
Thanks for being our guest, Dan. It was really good.
No problem, with pleasure. Great speaking to you guys.
Having a good have a
Thanks
good day,
Daniel.
and stay
healthy.
Bye bye.
And take it easy.
Can you say you are my father?
See ya. Cheers,
Okay,
Daniel.
guys. Cheers. Have a good one.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.